Hello, allies. It is Monday, September 9th, and here is your Cup of Jones. I am Brandon Jones. Hopefully everything looks and sounds okay. Graphics a little too loud, mic a little too low. I think I might have been off mic. I was checking with the settings this morning, and everything seemed okay. So apologies if I hide my face behind people who are listening to this podcast, not watching it. Podcast show, whatever this is. Don't have to worry about that, but I might try to get a little closer to the mic, try to have everything be nice and balanced. Let me know how it is. As always, Cup of Jones, even Phase 4 Cup of Jones is an evolving show. We did reactions. We're starting the week with reactions. We are ending the week with reactions. Project Resistance, I have not checked up on this game. I think we already maybe learned everything we thought we were going to know about this game just from looking at the leaks, but we had reactions this morning, and we're going to have reactions at the end of the week for Nier and Final Fantasy XIV reactions this Saturday with, I believe, Brad and Damiani, possibly some more people. So I'm not a part of any of that. I have not been involved in a lot of reactions lately. They have been at very odd times of day. They've been very difficult to add to my work week. So apologies, and I have not been involved in a lot of reactions lately, but kudos, cheers to all the allies that have been doing reactions, and cheers to all of you. Last week sucked in a lot of ways because we had a ton of technical issues. It was weird. It's strange when you get like Gremlins and just all of this stuff happens at the same time. We had equipment that wasn't working. We had internet that was failing. Spectrum is angry at the Spectrum gods are angry at us because we're switching internet providers. Phase 6, surgically insert mics into our lower lips, says Daniel Bloodworth. You joke, Bloodworth, but by the time we're in our 60s, we're going to have all sorts of weird little gadgets like inside our body floating around that will help us stream video games easier. And the worst one is we had a power outage. And I don't know if we've posted it. I posted the audio at the end of the podcast. I was thinking about tweeting it, and I'm like, I don't know if that's an annoying tweet or not because Huber is very loud in the video. But Huber screamed "Booyah!" and our power blew out. But it was a wonderful little rainbow effect in the studio. Like all sorts of pretty things happen with the lights, and we're like, oh, Ian knew Doom 64 was going to be mentioned during the podcast. I was waiting with his Doom 64 cool light transition, and then a very frustrated Ian comes walking into the room like, yeah, so we're out. Like we lost half of our stuff. So the bonus is. Looking ahead at the future, we have new internet. It is paid for. It is being installed. It is being configured. It is coming. So fingers crossed that all of that works out well. And in the event of another complete power outage, if the apocalypse happens, all the power goes out. Fortunately, we probably wouldn't be streaming anymore. But if we're shooting something in the studio, we now have figured out where all of that power is going. And we just lost a couple of things we weren't expecting to lose. And had a very interesting version of the podcast this week. So apologies we had those technical issues, but it's nice. As Thomas Edison said, I don't know the direct quote, if something goes wrong, you just learned however many ways not to do it. If it took a lot of ways, I've completely butchered that quote. You know what he said. When you things with lots of things, you're doing it's bad, but then all those bad things made the good thing better. It was frustrating to deal with all of that stuff, but we are still, again, we're not in the studio for a year, so we're still trying to figure out when you have things like the whole power going out. It was fun getting back in my car and driving home, and like all of the lights were off. I was like, all of the street lights were out, and it's like when you have weird little curvy streets and like weird little intersections that just kind of pop into each other, and at 10:30 at night, and everyone's trying to figure out what's going on. And you don't even have the street lights or the lights from the stores. It was just like out. So that was fun. But actually, even if that happens next time, I don't want that to happen, but we will see. Fingers crossed that we will be able to roll right through it and at least get a clean stop on the podcast and then, reconfigure everything, hope the power comes back, and then jump back on. But and another thing to keep in mind is, I don't work for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, but I think that tends to happen when, the summer is really kicking in, even though technically summer is, winding up on the calendar. The summer doesn't really kick in until September, October in Los Angeles now. And so everyone's got their AC cranked, including Ian. So the irony. I want to mention before we get into business questions that I edit questions now. I move order around. I've talked about this in the last couple episodes, but I try to be as brief as possible, only keeping the pertinent information. If questions kind of drag on for too long, or if there's a question that I've already answered, I won't answer it. I might answer it in the comments. There's a good chance that, not necessarily a good chance, maybe like 1 in 20, They're like, if you ask a question, it actually won't be featured in the episode. And if that happens, and if you aren't watching this episode, obviously, if people complain about that, if you hear people that are frustrated, they're like, I left my question on Cup of Jones. Be like, well, just try again. Like, you can submit it again, maybe try to rephrase that. Or if you asked a question and I kind of gave you an abridged answer, like I just kind of took the question sentence out and you were like, I see what you did to save time, but I actually needed a little bit more clarity, feel free to ask the question again. As you can see, like, we're not very bloated with Cup of Jones. Last week's Cup of Jones was under an hour. I'll go an hour and a half, and that's okay. Like, I don't want to keep it just at an hour. I just want it to be as quick as possible. So if you didn't get the answer you want, feel free to ask again. And if I don't reply in the show, I'll always try to reply in the comments or at least get a message to you. And really excited about this. Let's take a look at this week's schedule, everybody. Daniel Bloodworth putting a wonderful schedule together for us every week. Not only is this nice for everybody to have, because unfortunately our schedule app on Twitch didn't work anymore, and so we weren't able to put our schedule up. Sorry, Bloodworth, if you missed it early, it's worth noting that Spectrum came and fixed our internet to some extent, so should be good until the new provider comes. The signal was way out of standards. Oh my! So Spectrum, okay, Spectrum came in. So hopefully, fingers crossed. I just don't want to make I don't want to make any promises with internet. It's dangerous to even talk about that. But love that Bloodworth put this together. So I figured let's go through this every week if he's taking the time to do it. Again, we had our reactions this morning. Cup, you're watching right now, color coded. For easy reference, and our wonderful streams, Knights and Bikes, which I'm so glad that we're streaming because I think that makes such a jolly co-op game, and it's wonderful that tomorrow the stream team will be picking that up. One of these days I will join. One of these days I will join the stream team. I promise. River City Girls will be our group stream tomorrow night. Wednesday, Mike and Mike will be playing Resident Evil 5, which is I love Resident Evil 5. Just for the record, I'm very excited about that. The Mana team comes back this Thursday. Our Pokemon Silver stream, which has been very emotional and very loud and very dramatic and very trying, but very fun, continues with Kyle Bossman. And then our podcast premieres on Friday, which is fun for me because it's neat to start the week with the podcast now being later in the week, with Cup on Monday, and then ending with editing the podcast on Friday, and then I put up the podcast. And then generally, if I don't have any reviews to cut or projects to work on, I get the weekend. I don't have anything to do over the weekend. This weekend, I still wrote like our Patreon promo and other things, but it's just nice to, for the record, I actually had a very relaxing weekend. My folks came by yesterday, and Saturday, Amanda was running around doing errands and things, and I just spent all Saturday with Milo. It was actually the first time I've ever done that, where I just spent an entire day, and I was mostly the person. I mean, shout out to Amanda. She's still working, on things and caring for the child. But it was just really, really nice to have that. And so with Phase 4 kind of settling in with our schedule, what it is now, and with, my schedule, again, still, Trailer Jones still working on that. But everything's kind of normalizing in Phase 4. And I had evidence of that this weekend with a nice, relaxing, I got good sleep. Feeling good, everybody. Back to the schedule. Reaction shots on Friday. Mother 3, which I haven't been able to watch any of, which is like one of the things that I miss about having Blood not come over to the garage to play Mother 2, because I haven't seen any of Mother 3. I've purposely not seen any of Kyle Make a Game Boy Game, which will be back on Friday at 9, because I want to watch all of that and play that game when it's done. Weekly Hunts is on Saturday. Easy updates on Saturday night. And like I mentioned, then Nier and Final Fantasy reactions are also on Saturday. And then if you are not, the $5, if you do not get that podcast early, then you can check out the podcast on Sunday. There it is. We'll go through that every week. Again, I went through the entire schedule beat by beat because it's the first time we've ever done that. But I thought that would be fun. And yay, we did it. That was clean. Yeah, I was worried that would be weird or that would be wouldn't work for some reason. Again, with all these fancy new graphics and transitions, never not let me know they're not working. Let me, like when there's audio levels are off or something was weird, or you noticed a frame that was out of place, let me know. And again, shout out to Chris and Joe, who actually made a couple tweaks, updated the thumbnail and made a couple tweaks to the graphics in between episodes, so they should be a little more polished. Speaking of, let's do business questions. David Warren, multiple podcasts had issues with corrupt or lost audio files. When are we getting a backup of some sort? It could be as simple as running a line to one of the cameras to record on them at the same time as whatever you're using now. Already talked about that, but just wanted to make sure that you knew that David noticed and was getting out there on our behalf to let us know that things were off. So yeah, again, it feels bad that stuff like that goes wrong, but it feels good when you know you fixed it? ? Felt bad that the audio levels weren't perfect last week. Feels good knowing that I maybe have fixed them. Dwayne L., do you guys have a ViewSonic sponsorship link or something? All of the links are available in the description. Thank you to our sponsors. So it is in the description on the YouTube link. We have the names on the bottom of our website, but we don't have links to them on their website. It will most likely be useless to me now, but I was just curious. But now that I think about it, being in Canada might make that link pointless anyway. Also, what is up with the schedule on the website? It is showing some ridiculous uploading times for me, then only to have the show I am looking at posted a day before and at a more appropriate time. For example, on the website, the podcast for me says it'll be up on Saturday at 2 a.m., but then will be posted on Friday around 3 p.m. my time. Also, I noticed something similar with weekly hunts this week. It was very confusing hearing Ben go on about weekly hunts later in the week during the Final Fantasy VIII Remastered stream, and then the website has at the time telling me that it was happening on Friday. This is not a big issue for me, really. It only becomes a bit of a problem with the live shows. This is something I was curious about. If it is an issue that cannot be fixed, no worries. Sounds like the podcast thing might be a difference between when it's posted for patrons and when it's posted for the public, and it sounds like weekly hunts moved. It sounds like that's what happened with both of those things. And our schedule definitely is in flux. We will post that image at the beginning of the week, but, you know, you never know what'll happen. I actually was kind of ill when I woke up on Thursday morning, and the first thing I thought of when I was ill was like, oh no, Pokemon Silver. Weekly hunts didn't move. Okay, so yeah, not sure what's happening there. That is a very specific website issue. Again, if it... maybe just do a shout out to our community and see if are you having issues also with the calendar on the website. Let us know. But the schedule should be in your local time. Yeah, so don't know, Dwayne. Check it out. Let us know. Ulf himself, please start the stream, then wait, the Q&A stream specifically, then wait like 5 minutes or so before starting with questions. This allows not only the email notification to go out, but also Patreon itself to update. Several times I've been sitting in F5ing Patreon and still somehow missed the first question. So I think a decent suggestion, I'll throw it out to the team, wait about 5 minutes before we start the Q&A, before we actually answer questions. I think there was a rush before because we wanted to get through all the questions and we knew we had a limited amount of time. Now, even if allies are dropping out, we're going to get to all the questions. But Bled says the podcast is a placeholder time because it doesn't have a set time. It's at 11 p.m., similar to December 31st on Amazon. Oh, got it. Okay, there we go. Alexander Zirianov, time to talk about Google Forms and the Q&A. We have three comments about that in a row. I have a couple suggestions for Google Forms. Share the view-only link to the table where submissions are stored, especially if you plan to use this method for Community Showcase. I'm not going to use it for Community Showcase because for two reasons. One, I want people to be able to find the stuff, so I want people to be later to put up that post and have you be able to go back to old community showcases, and there's not only the posts of people linking the art and videos and everything, that the music and everything, but if they want to also post additional information, their Instagram, whatever, their website, they can all post that all there, and that'll hopefully be preserved unless comments get deleted. And also, there's a fun conversation that happens in every post. You know, every time we put up the showcase, those comments are great in terms of interaction and people saying that they like stuff and talking about the work that they've done. And so I want to try to preserve that. I just wish Patreon works better than it did. And number two, consider enabling editing of submission if you aren't doing this already. Again, I will throw all of these Q&A suggestions at the boys. Working with Brent on possibly updating the schedule to just say Friday with no time. Going back to the previous question. Varun Kachwaha. So if you didn't know, didn't watch last week, Alexander Zirianov had a lot of issues with how Google Forms works, a lot of very specific notes that we are pondering at the moment, and Varun is jumping on that. Most of the time, I'm too busy to watch the whole video or even write the question so far in advance, even if I have the question in mind already. I can't watch it all live. Evenings and the weekend are always busy, or watch it all at once. They're quite long. So knowing exactly where my question is really helps. I could be skimming through it knowing my question after X comment or before X comment. It's a massive help and helps me save so much time when I would otherwise be busy with something else. Usually when I ask a question, I look forward to the answer. It's natural to care more about the question you have asked. So I'm usually impatient and want to know the answer to that first and then listen to the rest another time. I'm a constant worrier, and this extends to me editing my question so many times after I submit because I always miss out on something or something weird. Even after or word something weird. Even after my edits, I still miss something or word something badly. The ability to edit my submission was another thing that was massively helpful. Both going really makes me think that submitting to the Q&A just might seem like more trouble than it should be. And I know the goal is to go through all the questions, but I also know that if your question is below approximately 20 other questions, then the chances are that your comment will not get read. I don't mind Google Forms. I just need the ability to edit my comment and view other comments where it lies in those comments. I think it makes everything a lot more convenient, and this seems like a backward step. Okay, So making you able to edit your comments, if that's a thing that we could do, I think we should try to do it. I don't know how the team feels about that. So I will throw that out at them. That has now been brought up several times. I wonder if one of us, including me, I wonder if I would be willing to step forward and maybe do time codes for the questions. So when we post that stuff later, because it sounds like you're not watching the Q&A live, you're going to go back and watch it later. And I wonder if that's the case for a lot of people that leave questions specifically. People that watch it live are like, I'm just watching it live. I don't necessarily care when my question comes up because I know you'll get to it eventually. I'm just watching it live to hang out and, leave comments and just kind of watch this live. But maybe like most of the audience watches it after the fact. I don't know. Did I not see this reply? I do put time codes in the Q&A every month. Oh, weird. Okay, then... yeah, you got your time code. The podcast is placeholder time. You're replying. Wait. I don't know if I saw your reply. Sorry, Blood. I didn't know that. There you go. That's why we got Blood in chat. So there, yeah. So I'm curious. Again, I have not dabbled with Google Forms. We're not doing it for the showcase, which is when I would have experimented with it. But if we can make editing, then that seems to have solved all your problems. Let me know if it doesn't. And thank you, Blood, for doing that. Again, just kind of puts in perspective how much Blood does for this company that I was like, oof, maybe I can add that to my workload. And Blood's like, I already do it. Like, welcome to my workload, Jones. Master Pants, would you consider at least allowing the option of users submitting their community showcase post through Google Forms? Even with the so-called safety post, my community showcase post was eaten by Patreon. I would rather forego the ability to edit for not having to worry about it disappearing. And if it was optional, people who prefer to submit here could still do so. Would you consider allowing a Google Form option for Cup of Jones? I've had like 4 Cup of Jones questions eaten already. I don't know. I don't necessarily worry about Cup of Jones so much because it is our Patreon show about Patreon on Patreon, and it's $1 to submit a question, and there's 4 episodes a month, so you can, and again, it's not like, this is not a thing where you're submitting something that I'm then going to do, like you're not submitting, your name for the end of the podcast show or something. It's like, I run through so many questions. I'm not worried about stuff that might seem insensitive, but I'm not, we get through enough content, I think, in every episode. The community showcase potentially, again, Brandon at easyallies.com. You can always email me if you're like, hey, saw that my comment got deleted. Here's the post. I'm worried about it. Or again, there's other things, comments. Also, we're answering every question now, so you don't need to hold a spot. Yeah, definitely. We get through all of the questions for the Q&A. We'll be doing that for Cup of Jones. I will consider doing that for the showcase or potentially posting. Again, there's the disclaimer in every post that I do, potentially adding information to the disclaimer of other ways that you can submit stuff if you see that stuff is missing. And possibly a way to do, if you're able to watch it live, I was thinking about, we ran out of time in the Q&A last time because it was a weird day. That was a weird day. That most Tuesdays won't be like that, but that was a strange Tuesday. Gosh darn internet. But I want to potentially maybe have a time at the end of the showcase where I check in with the Twitch audience and see if I miss anything. So I know that there were comments from the last showcase that got deleted. You could just see it in the numbers. I could see I'm looking at 96 of 100 comments. So I know that there's 4 that aren't showing up. Brandon K. Gann, would you be willing to have a small list of observations on things you've missed while playing Silver for every following stream? As in Pokemon Silver, as in the stream I do with Kyle every Thursday night at 5. I think the schedule said 6 maybe. I don't know. Thursday night. What Pokemon you missed out on catching and characters that will give you the items on the route west of Violet, only for the purposes of, oh, okay, cool. Not going back to that, but that's neat to know, to coincide with the fan art suggestion. No. I usually don't have opinions like that. I'm usually pretty jolly when it comes to this stuff and just like, yeah, you send me stuff. It doesn't matter. Don't send me that, Brandon. Actually, looking at what you saw before, I was like, I got to bleach my eyes. I want to try to forget that because kind of the magic, what we've lost in doing it live is me having experienced all this stuff and then, talking to Kyle as if I've like emerged from a cave in the fog. And I'm like, I was in a place called Johto and it was strange and there were weird things. And Kyle's like, welcome back, Jones. Let's talk about it. And at the end of it, I'm like, okay, here I go. And then I wander back into the forest. Now we're both there and experiencing it at the same time. And so you lose a little bit of that magic. So I still want to try to maintain me just like, like a deer in the headlights. Like I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea what Croconaw is going to, that he's going to evolve into Croconaw or, what a Dunsparce looks like or the stuff that we missed. and that can be really frustrating. It's funny to see people really trying to steer the. I see chat a lot while I'm playing. I almost always ignore it because it's like I can't. If I was playing a shooter, if I was playing like a tower defense game, if I was playing something really in my wheelhouse, I'd be able to take comments from chat. If I was playing Red Dead, if I was playing GTA, if I was playing like an action game or something, and people are like, "Hey Jones, go to the right and do this thing," I'd be like, "Okay, great." But like that's not the genre a game I'm familiar with, and that's not the game that we're streaming. Like the whole point of this thing is I'm just kind of like bull in a china shop, just running through and going where my heart pulls me. So I appreciate, actually, you're willing to do homework on my behalf, and I appreciate that, Brandon. And I usually don't say, shut down people with suggestions like that, but I thought about it, and I'm like, I think that'll actually kind of ruin the special sauce of the show a little bit. But don't worry, I will definitely forget what you posted, because there's a lot of crazy stuff in that game. I did have one other ally reach out to me, someone from our community, who was like, my favorite Pokemon's in this game, and they said that name of that Pokemon, and I was like, okay, I'll at least remember that. But I don't want to know too much. Owen DJ, with the focus on streams, I can't believe even after Brandon plays Pokemon and Sun and Moon, I still know as little as I do about Pokemon Silver. Oh, and DJ, with the focus on streams for Phase 4, was there any consideration on how much income is generated from streams through subscriptions and ad views, etc., or is this figure so insignificant compared to Patreon it wasn't thought of during the discussions? Bloodworth jumps in. I'll let Jones get to the meat of your question, but as mentioned in the previous episode, the emphasis isn't really about streaming more, it's just about shifting how we stream. Rather than everyone streaming individually from home, our streams are more focused on coming into the studio to stream together. Whether that amounts to more or less time streaming overall isn't really the goal. And of course, we always talk about those things. We always look at those metrics, but they are one of many factors in every decision that we make. So none of those streaming decisions were made really with more of a Patreon monetary, because that's where a lot of those comments came from. And, really more focus on what we wanted to do. And it is fun. Going to the studio, being in there, having guys pop into streams, like being there, if I'm there for something, even there just for like 2 hours, that's after something and before something. So I get to talk to everybody that was there shooting the thing before. I get to help, work on whatever the next thing that people are going to do. It's great. Being around the office is super fun. And like I said, with the cup at the beginning of the week and podcast at the end of the week, it just is framed really well. Matthew Borg, how are things progressing with the office manager position? In quotes. I don't know if I actually quoted that. As Phase 4 continues with more streams being in the studio with several of you together, I'm thinking the need for a more 9-to-5 position that is in the studio on a consistent schedule, perhaps part-time hours based on your business needs, is going to be increasingly important, so you can ensure that everyone is running smoothly when the regular allies just come in to do their thing. The concept of hiring a stranger to hang out in the studio when we're not there is like, I don't know about that. I would definitely want it to be somebody that we know if we would fill this position, which I don't think we are planning on doing. What other duties are you thinking this person will do? I'm thinking business administration functions, like making sure you have facilities working, consumables are restocked, perhaps a receptionist to greet guests, as that becomes a more regular thing. No, we're not going to hire anybody to do any of that. This kind of factors into somebody, maybe I'll start this question, I'll jumpstart it a little bit ahead of time. Somebody asked, like, a big question, which is like, what are your goals now? Like, what are you looking forward to the future? And one thing we definitely talked about but haven't really pounced on yet is just not bringing somebody on full time, but bringing people on a project by project basis, bringing on another editor for E3, bringing on a social person when we're planning a big project, like when Box Peaks launches. Maybe we'll bring somebody else in to help us with social, or help us with whether that's just like a friend, or whether that's actually like a PR company, or whether we want to spend advertising money on promoting Box Peak, or our space definitely doesn't accommodate a receptionist, says Blood. Nonsense, Blood. We can definitely make that work. The little post at the top of the stairs, I've been to restaurants that have less than that a hostess or a host can just stand at. Hello, welcome. Very silly. I love the idea for receptionist though. That's the best. Hello, welcome. Oh yes, I'm sorry. The door was accidentally open and I just wandered in off the street. Welcome to Easy Allies. Can you please leave? I'm trying to think what was like the other one. Just an editor, like an extra editor who doesn't come into the studio but just handles. We almost had that when I was gone, when Ian was gone, and then Huber was gone and I was gone for paternity leave. Like we talked about like maybe this friend can come in and cut this thing, or so we do have some people at arm's reach that we haven't that have helped us, that basically have been pro bono forever, and we're just like, is the time to to pay them for things. We're kind of slowly evolving to do that, and right now it's mostly a project or event basis. It's like something big is coming up, we can't handle it all ourselves, or it's we're just going to produce a better product if we have somebody handle this difficult part, and then we go and get to have fun. So that's kind of where we're at. But an office manager position, especially the specific, apologies if you're sending me your resume, but the specific duties you described would be great. It would be super rad if we hired someone who kept the fridge full, but right now it's not. I don't think it's a smart use of our money. Alex Pizza, would you guys want to do game streams with other people outside of EZA? Hell yeah. I'd totally be down for it. Yep, our schedule's pretty stacked right now, but just like as evidenced by when we do event coverage, and there's been a lot of guest people on, specifically Fiasconauts and Friendcode, I think are like our most guest-heavy shows. Ben has also got some people on Frame Trap. We've had some people on the podcast, but specifically with streams, we also want to try to get. We've done what we call developer showcases, where we have devs come in and play games in our streaming room with the devs. Doing like one of those a week would be a dream. Tanner Hoisington, I know I just gave Blood a heart attack. It's like, what a week! Like, we're not anywhere close to that, but it'd be fun. It'd be neat, especially with LA devs, especially with weird like indie games, to just shine a light on people coming in. It's like it's kind of frustrating. Kind of funny. He's been doing all these showcases, and it's like, man, they're really leaning in heavily to the indie scene. They're really indie people must really love kind of funny. It's like, I want indie people to love Easy Allies. Stream those games. Tanner Hoisington, first time writing in. It's a question that popped in my head with the discussion of the upcoming Man of Medan stream. How do you justify streaming the entirety of a story-heavy game? Do you ever worry that it will lead to others not buying the game when they can watch y'all play the story? Depends on the game. Maybe for something, maybe like a random Life is Strange stream would be like, whoa, why are you streaming Chapter 3? I haven't even watched 1 or 2. But Man of Medan is like, that's Man of Medan. That's why the developers made that game, is for the stream that we did. Kind of Funny is literally married to indie people. I know. It's brutal. And What's Good Games has all the contacts that they have. It's brutal. You know what I mean? I can't get the contact. I've been trying to get the contacts with you, but you sign all of these contracts. You sign your life away. You do all these secret projects. Yeah. She booked a video game the other day. A very exciting video game. Hey. You booked it. It was exciting.
Listen now. You don't know anything about that.
Woo!
You don't know anything, Jon Snow.
There's that loopiness. There it is.
I'm just saying that, you live with this immense talent in your house, and you barely utilize her on your stream.
You can't see Amanda, but she's got the boba on, the strap, but there's no child in the boba. I was like, wait a minute.
He's in the other room.
Okay, good.
I'm being a good mom.
You are. You're being very responsible. Oh boy. Yeah, the Man of Medan is that is how that little coffee. Cheers. That is how that game is made, specifically even more so than Until Dawn. I almost get a sense that they saw people stream Until Dawn the way we and lots of other people did, and they were like, oh, we should just make a game for this type of stream. And we will definitely be doing that, and I hopefully will be involved in the next one, because I wasn't at the Man of Medan stream. I was cutting our review of Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I've cut the last 4 reviews. I'm very proud of that. It's nice looking at the playlist on YouTube, and I'm like, it's me. Yeah, Man of Medan Chapter 2 will definitely be full playthrough for sure. I wonder do we know when that's coming out? We know what that is, right? They tease the name at the end of it. James Vest, I want to ask about the group selection committee. The stream team. We call it the stream team. Group selection committee was definitely a different thing. I know you're not in charge, but the whole process feels a bit messy. The process of nominating the games is odd, as when thinking up games, a person doesn't know what the people streaming are looking for. Sure. I mean, that was the case as the selection committee before. An idea what you had a way to categorize the game for the period. Like, for example, in October, the category which people would suggest is horror games or Christmas games for winter. Then always other ways like this group stream will be about the system games or this type of games. When you do that, and then you do that and can move on. I think that would give patrons at that level more guidance in knowing what games to nominate based on what games the people streaming would be looking to play. Okay. I think Damiani's pretty good about that. I think that's maybe something that we can do every episode of the stream team, if there are qualifiers for that. I think most of the time there shouldn't be. That's kind of the point. that's kind of the point of having the stream team, is like, we want you to, pan the river and let us know what little gold nuggets that we possibly could have missed. Blood says that he does categories for Blood Pact, but it's not necessarily for Stream Team. And I don't know. See, it depends. Like, I mean, I'm tempted to like halt Pokemon Silver just for like 1 week, just for 1 week in October, and play a horror game with Kyle. I'll pay him money to do that. I really want to play. I love Halloween. I love October. It's my favorite month. And I just want to stream horror games a whole month. Like, I want to stream a horror game every single day. There's just no time to do it. We have too many other responsibilities, but, oh man, I've offended everybody. What? Pokemon Silver, Jones. Pokemon Silver is more important than Halloween? I don't think so. But, yeah, I kind of like the randomness of it, though, because it's like, is the right thing to do to have Stream Team be exclusively Halloween games? Or are we doing enough Halloween stuff in Halloween, in October, that it's actually kind of nice for the Stream Team to do some random stuff, to pick up some other games that you wouldn't have expected, to pick up something you've never heard of, some retro game from a long time ago. I'll throw that at them, and I don't think I wrote that in takeaways. Mention on Stream Team if you have a preference for genres. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Nope, next page. Nope, where are we? Straw Hat Ninja, I know you have gotten Ash and Roger's base recently, so do they get paid for appearing, or how does that work? So these are people that are on the When We Have Guest Stars. So far, to my recollection, we have not paid people specifically to be guest stars. You might have seen people on camera that we have paid, but we paid them for, like Jason Wishnov is being paid for Mysterious Monsters because he's coding the game and designing it with Ian. And we have had people, we've paid for graphics, and we paid people sometimes, when we did our concerts, we paid, the musicians and people on staff that were, selling merchandise and stuff. But specifically when you see Elise on, Mandatory Update, or Elise was also on Mysterious Monsters recently. Elise is just being a wonderful person, and we did not pay them. That is not to say that we haven't reached out to people and those people have said pay me, and we're like, oh, good to know. And again, there are Halloween Pokemon, Jones. I know there are Halloween Pokemon. Pokemon can be scary. Pokemon aren't inherently scary, though, Taco. But yeah, so we might be getting to that point, especially with the guest show. If we do that one day, if we get to that, my dream show, where we have a new guest every week, there might be some guests that are like, hey, I'm on a press tour. And we're like, oh, cool. Like, we'd love to help you promote your thing. Some movie that you're in, or some like really exciting guest. And they're like, yep, $2,000. And we're like, ooh. Worth it. Like, rough though. Asbo Zapruder. So if phase 4 of Easy Allies was Pippin, would it choose fire or family? Fire. We are taking this Easy Allies rocket directly into the sun. So obviously fire. Quaisnark, do you think the podcast length will creep again? You would know better than me, but I get the impression that there are a few people who are very active in the Cup of Jones question asking community, some of whom probably ask you a question almost every week. Do you think a lot of people would still want to be read on air, and the people who would have asked personal questions will now just ask business questions? Just so my intentions don't get misinterpreted, I don't think it's bad that so many people want to be part of this community and engage in the show. I just think it would be tricky to cut down on length with so many people wanting to engage with you. Do you think? I don't know. I mean, that kind of has to move with the natural evolution of the show. And to clarify, I know I just said that people ask for money to be on our shows. That in no way means that people are asking, giving us money to do any sort of editorial thing. We don't do reviews of films, obviously. I'm talking about someone who is a host, like someone who like I am I appear places and they pay me to be a host for stuff. And so if we were to have a host, we were to have someone that we're like, hi, we want you to be on our stage. They're like, well, that's what I do for a living. And so if I'm going to come on your stage and appear on camera as I do everywhere else, where, if it's like CD Projekt Red, we're not going to pay them money to be on, just for clarity. And Quaisnar gets, Cup will evolve. And, podcast length on the show, again, we're over about half an hour. So I think we can still get this one in under an hour. It'll be a very short editorial this week. And I got 2 editorials in a row. I feel good. Billy Zane gets $10 every time you mention his name. We don't pay him. If somebody gives Billy Zane $10 every time we say his name, I will never stop saying Billy Zane. Billy Zane. But yeah, I'm not worried because there's like a lot of ways. I made a lot of changes to Cup of Jones. Some of those might not necessarily be evident, and I think there's some more questions this episode than were the last couple weeks. But when I went on paternity leave, definitely saw a lot of questions drop off. When I said I'm only going to be putting personal questions, now I get an average of 2 or 3 every single episode, which is perfect. And so I think people are adapting to the format, and I think hopefully I just need to communicate with people if we are working outside of that, or if the show is getting long, or it evolves. It's kind of the point of the show. Sven Van Latham, why do you still not have an Instagram page? Not me, Easy Allies. You can link your Instagram with Facebook and only post it once and click. He said thick. You can copy to Instagram. It's literally only one click and you'll touch a whole new audience that is on Instagram. A lot of people have moved from Facebook to Instagram. They definitely have. So this is a logical step. I said in the past, no one takes care of the Instagram page, but again, you just copy the content through Facebook automatically. Another question, what is the next investment you guys are looking into for the future? Already answered the other question. Again, just other people and other equipment. One thing that came up that I got my eye on is more cameras and a switcher for the streaming room stage, so we can switch cameras and have more fun stuff going on in the streaming room stage, and more cameras for the other stage too, because we have the occasional board game show, which we're experimenting with multiple camera angles, and not only to set it up, but a way to have that permanent, so we don't have to move things around every time we want to do the board game show. Even though you can just click a thing from Facebook to Instagram, Bloodworth feels very passionately about this because Bloodworth would probably be the one that would be managing our Instagram page. I thought about this morning because it is not too dissimilar from having streaming on Twitch and then having that then go over to YouTube, because it is the same thing. We're just recording a video on Twitch. You can watch the archives on Twitch if you want, or you can go to youtube.com/EasyAlliesPlays. You can see all of our old streams. It's still work for Blood to do that on YouTube. Like, Blood doesn't just push a button on Twitch and then it's done. Like, he has to then go over to YouTube and then manage that on YouTube. So even though you're still parsing the information, it's not wise, it's not clean, it's not the way to run an Instagram account. And I'm not saying that like I'm good at such a thing because I've never done it. Well, I do have a personal Instagram account, but it's mostly just because Amanda tags me and stuff. Not having an Instagram page is up there with not having our own official Easy Allies Clips show, is up there with not doing the countdown, not doing shows that we've canceled, not focusing on retrospectives, not focusing on Game Sleuth. Like, there's a lot of like tying Kyle up, putting him in a chair and putting a tie on him and forcing him to do Final Bossman. Like, there's a lot of things that we do. I should make a short list of all of these. Like, these are people are like, I've figured it out. You just need to do this small thing and it's really simple. None of us have a passion for Instagram, even Ian, even me, even people with the visual flair. It's just not a passion of ours. It is a weakness for sure. It's something that we could definitely do and would greatly benefit us. Maybe that could be a responsibility of one of these people that we talked about that we can maybe bring on a project by project basis. Maybe we do some gigantic box peak Instagram rush. It is something that would benefit us for sure. It is not something that when it was brought up at our last Phase 4 meeting or at the beginning of 2019 meeting or at any meeting that we've had, somebody was like, ooh, I really want to do that. And Bloodworth, who I've been waiting to chime in. Instagram is entirely media-based. You really need to be creating content catered for it. Some things from our Twitter, Facebook might work, but not most of it. Instagram should be a full-time job. I don't want to half-ass Instagram because Lord knows we half-ass enough things here at Easy Allies. I was thinking about why the last episode was quiet, and I wonder if it's because I actually was like off mic. I wonder. So yeah, apologies, Sven. I know there's some things that we do might seem really frustrating because it seems like there's small efforts we could make, but not only it would take a lot of education on our part, it would take a lot of shifting responsibilities, and it would be a brand new thing. And brand new things are scary. Morgan Mohala, could you try to quantify what influences Easy A company decisions? Is it 50-50 audience allies? Is it 51% brand manager, 49% everything else? Does the amount a patron funds the company equate to any amount of influence? No. If it is an even split democracy, as I think it is, could the allies form a majority clique that controls the unfortunate minority? Is there a fail-safe for such an event? P.S. Please reconsider personal comments being read on the show. It adds a lot of personality and entertainment. Sorry, I keep them in the post. But I understand, Morgan Mohala, and because you've given me such awesome personal questions, you are definitely a personal question crusader, Morgan Mohala. I will try to squeeze those into an editorial every now and then because you do give me great stuff to talk about. But that was a business question, and there's no equate. Boy, wouldn't that be wonderful if there was like an equation that fit every single decision that we make at Easy Allies. There's some things that we do that are unshakable, like the Easy Allies podcast. You know, that's not 50-50 audience allies. That's 100%, you know, the Patreon. It's just what we built. Whereas like It's Easy to Like Anime is definitely like 90% allies, 10% audience because, you know, if we don't want to do it, if the guys don't want to do it, if there's no show coming up that's interesting to them, if the last season that they did was kind of grueling and they're like, I want to take a break from it. Like all of those things are definitely a factor. To give you less of a rambly answer, it's definitely more allies than you think. And that doesn't necessarily mean we're selfish or pushy or opinionated any more than you know that we already are. But it just that a lot of times we have to go with our gut. I've tried to go with my gut my entire career, even like back to, you know, creating content for Game Trailers back in 2005 and just being like, I think this is how video game reviews should be. I don't know. I would watch this video. And so we really have to, it's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like if you think you know what time it is and then you check the clock and you go, oh, it's a little bit later, a little bit earlier. That's kind of where we're at. Like you have an idea, you know, it's like us deciding to keep a show is kind of like, I think it's 10:38. And then I look at the clock and no, it's 10:44. Like, got it. Okay. Then I'll move the needle a little bit to match that. And so that's kind of us checking in with the community. Kind of like, I think it's this. Does the community agree with me? Whoa, they don't. Well, I'm still going to go forward with this, but I will keep that in mind that they don't like it, and I will look out for those comments. But if everything's perfect, I don't know. Sometimes when everything's perfect, I get nervous. Joe Frantic, do you guys have a policy against taking paid work from game publishers and developers? No. I mean, obviously not, because we have been sponsored before at a $500 level a month by games, which will then not review. We still cover them. One example is at E3, I played Iron Harvest, which was our sponsor for a little bit, which is a wonderful, again, sponsored, which is a fun real-time strategy game. And again, I'm terrible at real-time strategy games, and I was terrible at the demo that I played at E3. And I think you could dig through our E3 coverage, and I did talk about Iron Harvest. But it's a really fun visual aesthetic. It's really fun how it's like not steampunk, but it's like it's kind of Wolfenstein-y. It's like what if there was just a lot more technological advancements in World War II? How would that war have played out? So we're not going to be reviewing that game. Like, we're never going to be officially editorially stating, like, here's what this game is. I'll just be like, hey, I played it and here's my opinion, but, you know, always know that we were sponsored by those people. We will always try to bring that up and always try to make that transparent. Scorn is a classic example. I think that was the first game that ever sponsored us. We were like, hey guys, a game is sponsoring us. It's a really cool, creepy horror game. So we'll, you know, we always love Scorn. Thank you, Scorn. You know, Scorn sponsored us for a very long time, but we'll never review it. When I see other channels doing things they were clearly paid to do to talk about a game, I inherently have issues with trusting them after that. I would not like to see the allies fall into that camp. Surely they can say they're still impartial until they are blue in the face, but companies would only do those deals with people who they do not fear will speak badly about them. Yeah, it's just transparency. It's communication. It's clearly labeling things, identifying. Obviously, we do avoid doing game-sponsored stuff, though. We have a statement about that on our page that lays out our stance. You can check that at easyallies.com. But just one example of something that we did, and again, this would be insanely transparent. You know, you would be, oh, okay, I could very clearly see what they're doing, and then I would then move, you know, the review off to someone else, and I wouldn't be involved in that. We got a lot of traction from Brandon Plays Pokemon, and I suddenly had this, you know, infatuation with Pokemon. Pokemon Go was coming out, and Sun and Moon was coming out, and there was just this huge rush of all these Pokemon things that were happening. And so Kyle and I had this fun show, and so we definitely reached out to Nintendo. We were like, hey, Kyle and I did this fun show. I'm probably not fit to review Pokemon games anyway, and Kyle doesn't review games. Like, it'd be fun for us. I think this is around the time that Greg Miller and Tim Geddes hosted that big Final Fantasy 15 event. And I was like, it'd be fun imagine if Kyle and I did that for Pokemon. Imagine if there was like, not a Pokemon Direct, obviously, because all of that is done in Japan, but like, you know, if there was some live event that they had or some launch party, and like, there's Kyle and I, and then Kyle's like, hey, and there's all, you know, Pikachu's dancing next to Kyle. Like, that just cracks me up. I think that would be really funny. And I think like people could tell, okay, that's them doing that. And then I'm not going to turn around and drop a review score on whatever game we're covering. I would hand that off to somebody else. I wouldn't even be on Frame Trap talking about it. I'd be like, I am clearly a shill just for this one thing, you know, like, but I've established myself as like, I'm just learning more about this franchise, and Kyle doesn't review games. Just as long, Kyle would hate it. I know, that's why it would be beautiful. So as long as all of that stuff is apparent, as long as we talk about it, you know, and we have multiple outlets to talk about it. We stream a ton, so we're, you know, people can always bring it up on chat. I do Cup of Jones every week. I can talk about it here. So just as long as that conversation keeps going. So if anybody that's, you know, on Patreon or Reddit or, you know, Reset Era or whatever, and it's just like, hey, whoa, this is kind of shady, and it's like, no, I know, but you missed them talking about this, or you might have just seen a clip of it, but like they were, you know, very upfront about how all of that works. But to echo Bloodworth, we do avoid doing game-sponsored stuff. We have a statement about that on our page that lays out our stance, because this is something that I've thought about, and because it is something that, like, could be a conversation that we could discuss depending on what project we would work on. Compared to the output that we have done editorially and stuff that we've done that has been sponsored by developers or publishers, the sponsorship stuff makes up like 0.04%. It's a very, very small percent of the overall stuff that we do. Most of the time, if not almost all of the time, we are working completely independently, just being sent code by publishers and stuff. I probably just give Blood a heart attack talking about all of those things. Brand manager kicking in. Let me take the brand manager hat off. Milo's crying a little bit. I don't know if you can hear it. Sergey P. Hey, Jones, hear me out. A group stream. The game is Blair Witch, and the guest is Matt Blair. Bloodworth with the truth drop. Unfortunately, Matt lives about 2,500 miles away now, so it would be totally dependent on him coming back in town for other reasons. It would also be very dependent for him to want to come back and be on camera. It has nothing to do with him wanting to be on camera with us, just wanting to be on camera in general. His new position does not call for that very much. And some of you were like, who Blair? Matt Blair is the 10th ally. Matt Blair, you know, is one of those guys, even if you were just kind of like, you know, from afar viewing our stuff that we did at Game Trailers, you might have completely missed Matt, because Matt was off camera a lot of times, because Matt was managing our website. Matt was managing all of the trailers that we put up. Matt was managing, you know, very, very unfun jobs at Game Trailers. And so we let him play hockey games at work. We tried to throw him a bone whenever we could, because we were doing shows and streams and having a blast. And sometimes he was involved in those things, but a lot of times he was doing the grunt work of running GameTrailers.com. Shout out to Matt Blair. Love Matt Blair. So this Twitter's Mattius something. I don't know if he still tweets, but I haven't seen that guy in a while. Matt Blair. As Genesis. During the last Cup of Jones, you expressed some concern about being loopy in the podcast. Why do you think that is a bad thing? Do any of the other 8 allies feel the same? Would you rather lean more to an all-business, no-nonsense podcast? I personally found that episode, particularly that Sims-related game, so funny that I regretted listening to it while doing some chores around the house rather than watching it on YouTube. Yeah, that was dynamite. I'm so happy that we at least caught like the end of that. Oh, no, that wasn't that episode. That was the episode before that. Loopiness is not a question of comedy. It's not. I mean, every episode eventually gets loopy. That's the audio editing that I do for the podcast involves me looking for that when all 5 levels, all 4 panelists and Ian all laugh at the same time. Ha ha ha! You can see all of the audio levels go up, and then that always peaks. So those moments are great, and you know that's like it's. You know, you can't just generate laughter automatically. You can't be like, and everybody think this is funny, snapping my fingers. And so it's neat that almost, you know, at least 4 or 5 times in every single podcast, we will all crack up at something, because I love these guys and I love hanging out with them, and they are funny, especially Kyle. Kyle's a great moderator. But the loopiness doesn't have to do with silliness. Silliness is always encouraged at Easy Allies. It has to do with thinking I'm doing one thing and I'm actually doing another. And that is one of the reasons why I still cut the podcast when I was gone. It's one of the reasons why I'm so glad that I do cut the podcast and Trailer Jones and other things where I am editing me talking, because I can have an episode like when we talked about the first episode 9 trailer for Star Wars, and I didn't really let my panelists talk at all. You'd think I'd get all my talking done on Cup of Jones, but I just like powered over all of their sentiments and replies. And so it's nice to experience those things firsthand and be like, oh, that's what I sound like? Or, oh, I was trying to make a point here and I don't think I was doing a good job making that point. I think that's one of my weaknesses, actually, is I kind of jump to like the 4th step out of 5 steps in explaining something, and I miss the beginning, and you don't even know what I'm talking about. So it's more like that. Loopiness, which makes me hard to understand and not just silly. No problem with silly. Joseph LaRussa, you have oftentimes given the answer that certain shows do or do not happen simply because a particular ally or the allies as a whole don't want to do it. Recent examples of this include Final Bossman and Top Tens. But you also acknowledge the value those shows could add to Easy A. At what point does an ally's or the allies' desire to not do a show get outweighed by the known increase creating said show would have on the Patreon numbers? Thus far, it would have seen the answer is never, but I'm curious if you have a more detailed answer for us patrons. Not really. Granted, you have no fiduciary duty to the patrons. You don't have to regularly try to grow Easy A. You owe us no reports or even answers to any questions, as we are free to leave at any time. That said, the allies do owe a duty to each other to do everything they can to grow the business, as it is an LLC. Oh, is that our fiduciary duty to each other? So they talk about investors. We are all investors, so the investors are owed to the investors, are beholden to the investors for investing in the LLC as investors. And you're all considered managers of the company, so I return to the above question and add when we're all considered, managers. And add, when do you tell an ally you have to do this, whether you want to or not, for the good of the company? God, very rarely. Usually it's a this or that situation. So sometimes an ally will be like, this game came out and I want to review it, but I also have the show I'm doing and I'm thinking about reviewing the game. And sometimes we'll be like, screw that game, do your show. And they're like, okay, cool. And so it's less like, I want to do this thing. And we're like, no, you do the other thing. And more decision making, more somebody being like, I don't know, what should we do? And we're like, okay, we'll make the decision for you. And so sometimes we say those things contractually. How it would work basically is if one ally disagreed and 8 allies agreed with each other. That's basically how the business works. If we had a business issue that we needed to solve, having to negotiate technical issues between Viacom and Defy probably took 10 years off his lifespan. Matt Blair. Matt Blair. Matt had to take on the jobs of like 6 people at the end of GT. Again, Matt Blair. Love Matt Blair. So yeah, I don't think we've had that issue. We've definitely had expressed interest, and I don't think that there's any cap on us, as evidenced by Ian, on your behalf. Ian brings up Kyle doing Final Bossman all the time. Like, if you suggest that to me, Ian suggests that to Kyle, like it's Christmas time for, Ian to suggest that to Kyle again. And so I don't think we have any reservations about bringing that stuff up. Man, we're going to make it about an hour. This is great. The new Cup of Jones. I love it. So we have in black and white on paper, we have the ability to do that if that issue has come up. We've never even come close to having that issue come up. And sometimes we make decisions for people that either can't make the decision for themselves or don't want to, or kind of leaning one way. And, it's like Blood has influenced review scores and, 0.5 here, 0.5 there. We've definitely encouraged one person to be on a podcast over another, or some person's made an executive decision over the thing we're playing for a group stream, or thing that we're reviewing or not. Just moving priorities around. And Sergey in chat asks if there's going to be a Blair Witch review. And Blood replies, Huber was talking about maybe streaming Blair Witch sometime, but no solid plans. Yeah, apologies if there's been a lot of games we didn't review. I talked up Marvel Ultimate Alliance a lot, and we never really should have cracked that whip. 8 of us should have voted for Huber to finish that Ultimate Alliance review. That's when we should have asserted ourselves. Final business question. Owen, on this week's podcast, Huber said to Kyle something to the effect of, as someone who doesn't review, have I just never noticed that Kyle doesn't review games? Or did I just hear Huber incorrectly? If that's the case, is it okay if I ask what he does in addition to moderating the Easy Allies podcast at Box Peak? Sure. You didn't mishear that. Kyle doesn't review games. We actually, if you check out the last Q&A, Kyle answered this question. I should have had that clip ready and should have played it here, but I don't. But if you go back to the Q&A, you can see why Kyle doesn't review games. And it was nice to actually hear that, because I just accept that he doesn't want to review it, and so it's not something I go back to him to ask. I know when I'm wasting my time. He did review Cooking Mama, though, so you can go back and I think it was a Game Trailers. If you look up the Cooking Mama 5 Game Trailers review, or that was it Easy Allies? It's been a while. Don't remember. It's been a while. What Kyle does, Kyle is actually very instrumental in like Hall of Greats and event streams that we do. And you can kind of tell when Kyle will like start talking at the beginning of a stream, like that was Kyle's baby. So he puts a lot of that stuff together. Kyle obviously does bets, produces that. When we did our stand-up stream, obviously Ian was very involved in when we had the special lights and we did the monologues, so like Kyle was very instrumental in conceiving of a lot of those things and setting up a lot of that special stuff. I think Kyle created Hall of Greats. I don't know. I remember Kyle being very instrumental in the very beginning of Hall of Greats, and he's had a lot of opinions about, evolving that show. Kyle was very involved in our group streams every Tuesday night. Kyle's very active on Slack in terms of like what games we should be streaming. And again, just not very much in the conversation in terms of stuff that we review, but like whenever we set up events and stuff like that, he's always very, very involved. And it's always like a lot of Bloodworth, Damiani, Kyle that are, and again, Ian mostly from a technical perspective, but looking ahead at a lot of like big, preview reaction tentpole events. Kyle's there for a lot of reactions as well. Kyle streams with me Pokemon every Thursday night and streams his own stuff every Friday night. I have been told by several members of our audience Kyle is the best streamer of all of us at Easy Allies. What? What do you want? What? You just creeping on me?
Yeah.
You and Milo creeping? Creeping. Milo's got like the back head look. He's just kind of like, there's something over there. I know it. I'm on the last question, man. She wants to come on because she used to do that. I used to have a manageable Cup of Jones length, and Amanda's like, ha ha, 20 minutes. No.
Ask me questions. I'm right
There are no more questions. We're done. No more questions. What else does Kyle do? And Kyle shows up in a lot of other streams. Kyle is a Fiasconauts regular. And of course, as we said, Kyle manages the podcast. Kyle pops up on every other podcast that we do, Friend Code, and Frame Trap. And so it's interesting. So Kyle is on that border, unlike Dawn, who also doesn't review games. They all, Ian doesn't review games either, and so that's the three that don't. And again, Don is editing a lot of stuff for us and producing Design Lab and working on Huber shows, and Ian obviously does all of his technical assistance. Kyle, other than not reviewing games, is generally a part of like the same editorial cycle that we have when we talk about stuff. So he's still there talking about games that he is playing. He just actually doesn't want to put a review. Loves scoring trailers, but not scoring games. Fascinating. And there we go. That's it for business questions. Very excited about today's editorial. So, I had a fun weekend. I really enjoyed this weekend. It was very relaxing. And one of the coolest things that I did this weekend that made me so happy was I played a lot of Super Nintendo games. And I thought this was so interesting that the NES games came to Switch, and I kept talking about backwards compatibility. I talked about backwards compatibility, there's a lot of old games. I want SSX Tricky on my Switch. Like there's a lot of, I think it's really exciting whenever games, even like Witcher 3 is like tempting to check out on Switch. Does this even work? And so it's really cool to like a lot of remastered games. Final Fantasy 8 is even tempting to check out, even though like what a time sink that would be for my schedule. But when I got the NES games, though, I was like, yeah, these games are fun, but it's kind of like a novelty. Like, I don't really know, especially this list of games isn't really like my jam, kind of like the games that I, grew up playing. And so Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like I was more of like an action game guy, Contra. And so a lot of the NES games they were like fun platformers and weird sports games. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. SNES was a whole different thing. This library popped up. And what was fascinating is the store on the eShop, or when you boot up all the lists of the Super Nintendo games, they're all listed by box art. And we had a moment on the Easy Allies podcast where Kyle brought up each of these games and said, are we going to play this game? Or are we going to take it or leave it, basically? And a lot of these games I wasn't familiar with, starting off with Brawl Brothers. And he brought up Brawl Brothers. I'm like, I have no idea what Brawl Brothers is. You sure it's not Brawl Bros? He's like, no, it's Brawl Brothers. I'm like, never heard of that game before in my life. Not familiar with it. Huber wasn't down on it. And Kyle said, well, Huber, you might eat your words because it's a beat 'em up. It looks kind of fun. There's fun grapple moves and stuff. So I've never heard of it. And then I bring up the Super Nintendo app and I look at it and I'm like, oh yeah, Brawl Brothers. Because the box arts, like all of these box arts I remember. Like even if I never played Earth Defense Force for Super Nintendo, you see the box art and I'm like, totally, because I spent so much time in Toys R Us perusing the Super Nintendo, market, the library of Super Nintendo games, and would just stare at all these games. And it was kind of like, nearing the end of this beautiful era of box art just being completely disingenuous with what the actual game was like. So it was funny, like seeing these things, be like, yeah, oh, totally. Even like some of the Kirby games, like not a big Kirby guy. I played every single one of these games on Super Nintendo. And I believe for a Cup of Jones first, let's see if I can actually get this going. Are we on? Boom. Let's look at them, baby. So here we go. I got my Switch plugged in. So I play all these games, and these games are great. Brawl Brothers is kind of fun. Had some fun grapple moves. It's co-op, so I'd love to get some other players in there. But Breath of Fire, I actually started a playthrough. And Breath of Fire takes like 3 hours to really get going. I am currently... like, let's get in there, So I'm like, this is like the second character. Like, it takes a long time to even get to like the second playable character, but she's got like, 2 other like warrior dudes in the party. So pretty fun. And it's fun. It's like, I played, Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI and like a lot of like Super Nintendo RPGs. So like getting a Super Nintendo RPG I've never played before. Pretty fun. Demon's Crest is great because it has like a Dark Souls opening. If you've never played Demon's Crest, I don't want to spoil the opening, but it's like a very they don't really explain a lot and just kind of throw crazy difficult things at you right at the beginning of that game. Fascinating. F-Zero, can't say enough. I haven't played it on this because I've played F-Zero a billion times. Did play Pilot Wings. I just want to prove to all of you the skill. No, I'm just kidding. But let's go to a load suspend point. Look at that. The end. Save slot 2. So already beaten Pilot Wings. Did I use some save states? Yes, I did. Kirby's Dream Land 3. Never been a huge Kirby fan. And I think Kyle was against Dreamland. He was not a big fan of Dreamland 3 because he said there were too many options. I got to side with Kyle. There's a lot going on in that game. Dream Course is Kirby Golf, which I'm like oddly down with. But, if you can play new 3D golf games, the old like isometric golf games don't have quite the same impact. Joe and Mac 2, sure. It's kind of like a weird art style. Star Fox, love it. Didn't play it recently. Stunt Race FX is crazy. There's a delay on what I'm looking at right now, so I'm actually not going to play it. But it's like, I played a game on Super Nintendo called Race Driving, and this reminded me of Race Driving, but I don't know if it's because it's on the Switch or if it actually ran this well on the Super Nintendo. But it's like a legit full, polygonal like racing game where you actually, it's like Virtua Fighter, where it's like really rough polygons, but you're like racing around. I was fairly impressed with that. I was not expecting that. Super Ghouls and Ghosts can go sit on it because that's a very difficult game. I hate that game. But it is very fun and very pretty. The music's really great. Earth Defense Force is a shmup, not my genre, but I played it. It's kind of fun. Love Super Mario Kart is great. Super Mario World is great. Never played Super Mario World 2. Started a playthrough, to begin, catching up on Yoshi stuff. The aiming thing is a little weird. I don't like waiting for things, and you like wait for like the aiming thing to like go up and down, and so it's like kind of a pace killer for me in a platformer, but I might go and finish that. Super Tennis I loved. Super Soccer, probably won't see myself playing it. I think that's Puyo Puyo, right? In the corner there. Interesting. Dr. Mario vibes. But especially, my camera is hiding it in the corner there, but we got The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past and Super Metroid directly above it. 2 Super Nintendo games I have played but never finished. Played very shortly, like just kind of, oh, this game's fun, and then moved on. Never owned, and was just not... I'm not like a massive early Zelda guy, and I've never really been a big, super Metroid guy. But now's the time. So here it is right here, folks. This is the current load state of my very first Super Metroid playthrough. Bam. I'm so excited. I just started. I went to the lab, and then now I'm on Brinstar. And so I'm going to play through Super Metroid, and then when I'm done with that, I'm going to play A Link to the Past for the first time ever. And I'm actually really excited because what's also fun about these Super Nintendo games let's go back to Cam. Bam. Our first game stream on Cup of Jones. We're very excited about that. But even though I didn't really play any of those things. Because I have the second monitor set up for my text. Otherwise, I would have the game set up there and I could do it in real time. But Amanda has also never played Link to the Past, and she really liked A Link Between Worlds. And what was fun is because we knew Dragon Quest Builders 2 was coming up, we knew Animal Crossing was coming up, we were like, we should probably invest in the Nintendo Online service. So I was like, oh, we should get the online service so you could play Link to the Past. And I'm like, oh, wait, we already have it. And so Amanda already has A Link to the Past, like on her Switch. And so I'm going to try to like goad her on to check that out. Maybe we'll do like a spoiler mode with Mike Damiani, Kyle Bossman, myself, and Amanda talking about A Link to the Past. Wouldn't that be fun? No promises. But the Super Nintendo rules. That's today's editorial. I just love the Super Nintendo. And when those NES games came to Switch, I was like, this is fun. But then Super Nintendo, I was like, I have to play all these. I have to check them out. The next time there's another batch, maybe I'll do another editorial and let you know what I think of all the Super Nintendo games. But the Super Nintendo was the 90s. And so I know a lot of you, I'm guessing, a lot of you, that was your, you were born in the 80s. And the 90s was, some of you were like, oh, dude, I was born like 12 years ago, dude. For some of you, likely you were born like mid to late 90s, and so you were just a youngin'. The first games you've ever played were like Super Nintendo going on to 64, PlayStation 1 games. I was in high school. I graduated high school in 1997, and so the Super Nintendo was high school for me. That was like, definitely like freshman, sophomore year of high school, and so Super Nintendo was like when I really started to get good at games, and I really started to like diversify, buy lots of different games. The Dreamcast is 20 today, just for reference, everybody. Thank you, Bloodworth. And so when I really started to like get obsessed with gaming as a hobby, that was the Super Nintendo. Not only that era, that console specifically. I bought so many Super Nintendo games, so it's wild to me that there's all these Super Nintendo games I've never heard of. But I realized this weekend, like, wow, I really love this console. I love this engine. I love this sound chip. I love this art style. I love this library. And I'm so down to play Super Nintendo games. And so I'm really down for the way Nintendo's doing that. That's my sell for Nintendo Online Service. Get you some Super Nintendo games in your life if you haven't checked it out. Today, the takeaways from today's episode: wait 5 minutes before the first question during the Q&A. Lots of Q&A focused stuff, which again, none of these are promises that any of this will change in the Q&A. I will just introduce them to, first and foremost, Ben, who is the host and the one who gathers all the questions and puts up the Patreon post and produces all of the stuff we do for the Q&A. Thank you, Blood. I actually wrote it in takeaway, but Blood already does timestamps when we post the Q&A on YouTube. So if you're looking for your question, that's where you can find it. Let us know if that is difficult for some reason. Consider allowing people to edit their Q&A submissions after they're in and mention on the stream team if you have a preference for genres, if they do or not. I don't know. But there we go. That's the episode of Cup of Jones. Bam! That is an hour. That's an hour, like an hour and 5 minutes. Another episode of Cup of Jones. We did it. Apologies if I talked too fast. Apologies if I skipped a question or I condensed your question in a way. Again, if you want me to elaborate on something, bring it up again. Always, and I should probably put this in a disclaimer in the original post for Cup of Jones, or I should probably create a general disclaimer for that original Cup of Jones post. But one of the main things that I look for is a question mark. So a lot of times, people will leave a comment, and I'm like, okay, you just kind of made you reiterated something that you said last week. You clarified, and I'm a little unsure. Like, do you want me to keep talking about that, or are you just replying to what I said? So if you do want me to keep talking about that, phrase it as a question, like on Jeopardy, and then I will provide an answer to that question. And hopefully that's how Cup of Jones will be moving forward. There we go. Let me just... one more swig of coffee. And another fun addition to the graphics, because I'm such a cheeseball, and I'm really excited about doing this way. I asked Chris and Joe to give me a version of the outro with 5 seconds of nothing at the beginning of it, just so I can cheers you, hands-free. Here we go. I'm a cheeseball. Cheers!